Okay, so let's make a quick start with regards to our discussion on learning outcome two. So from the previous session, we have covered learning outcome one, which is in the unit marketing principles and practice. And what we want to do is look at in the first session, actually, we looked at a bit of an introduction to marketing as a topic. And we also then got into the various functions, roles, and factors which affect marketing and marketing operations in any organization. In particular, we looked at one of them, which is non-profit. That means how do charities or cooperatives or voluntary organizations look at taking up the role of marketing, although they are not looking at driving the marketing or communication essentially for the sole purpose of profits. Their idea is to provide services to the community, and in some cases, some of these organizations can be funded by the government, by various international programs under the UN or United Nations, and there the main aim is to provide basic services or help in the betterment of people's day-to-day life as far as the community side of things are concerned. Now, in learning outcome two, we are going to be focused on understanding the marketing principles. So here, when we talk about marketing principles, we also, if you recall last time, we discussed what are called marketing concepts. Marketing concepts, there were 5 different types. I don't know if you recall, but production concept, sales concept, marketing concept. So when we looked at service concept, and when we looked at these particular concepts, they help us define what kind of products and services does an organization sell, where their focus is on marketing, and which area of marketing. Now, today, what we're going to do is basically look at the 7 principles of marketing. So in effect, when we say 7 principles, in general, what we are referring to is the marketing 7 P's, which are basically, created or initially introduced by Jerome McCarthy in 1960. So it was initially introduced as 4 P's, then later on expanded to 7 P's. We also sometimes talk about 9 P's. And this would be the crux of most of the discussion today, because we look at how these principles essentially help the companies, identify and obviously create marketing strategies and go to market. So these principles are quite essential for business because they help in understanding and then looking at creating and then implementing successful marketing campaigns. We'll also look at segmentation. So when we talk about segmentation as a process, we'll be looking into why sometimes companies need to divide using their marketing strategies, markets into different segments or subsets, essentially, if we put it this way. So sometimes when we hear about segmentation, we also come across terms like demographic, psychographic, geographical, and behavioral. So these are the typical segmentations that companies look at in order to further refine their strategy of how they are going to communicate and sell or manage goods and products in the market, and in general to consumers. The last part of it would be to analyze the digital principles. So when we talk about digital principles, we look at the ADA model in particular. We look at why sometimes with the advent of social media, internet advertising and mobile advertising, text messaging, some of these elements which have now got introduced into the marketing mix, how do we look at these being in relation to what is called digital elements? So we will look at some of the models there in terms of how the principles are slightly different from the basic 7 P's that we discussed, although they encompass and are a part and parcel of that, but how they are looked at in reference when we look at planning something like a digital marketing campaign or messaging which is going across to consumers for the same products and services which the company sells. But this is being done through the, as we used to say, traditional route of marketing, and in this case, digital route of marketing. So we look at covering these 3 assessment criteria. Along with that, we look at, what are the benefits of segmentation, which is basically an elaboration of the task in terms of segmentation in general. And then we'll also look at analyzing what are the key, challenges which businesses actually face when they look at segmentation and when they look at marketing principles. So these are the broad criteria that we have to look at today in terms of our learning outcome. And then in the discussions, we'll be looking at, obviously covering some of the frameworks today. So last time we had covered PESTEL framework. Today, we are going to be looking at SWOT analysis. We'll also look at another framework called STEP, which is basically focused more on, it's a frame subset or a framework of PESTEL only. But here, the focus is primarily on social, technological, environmental changes. So environmental analysis. And then when we talk about demographics, these are the 5 demographic segmentations that are recognized globally now in the market. This is what we look at: principles of digital marketing and some benefits of marketing, and obviously what challenges are being faced when companies look at going across to consumers with regards to their communication, and in effect why sometimes you feel that the sales cycle has become too long, or because the product is too expensive. So we will look at examples of, for example, if Mercedes-Benz is to sell a new car or Rolls-Royce is to sell a car, it's a premium segment. We look at the case study of Lamborghini. In terms of Lamborghini, initially the marketing department said that we should not advertise, or why should we advertise, because ours is a premium product and we have more demand than what we can actually produce and sell. And that is where the clue was that, okay, for premium products, the sales cycles can be longer, the buying cycles can be longer, budgets and creation of campaigns tend to be very, very focused, and also they need to look at orienting them towards the right clientele by identifying their segment, by, let's say, identifying their consumers while doing segmentation. So let's look at discussing some of these criteria and the details by looking into some slides that I've created, which is primarily a PowerPoint presentation. So in this presentation, we're going to be looking at a couple of the objectives, primarily the main pass criteria, the merit and extension criteria or distinction criteria, essentially are extension of activities wherein you need to look at taking an example. Now, let's start broadly with, I would say, a key terminology. So when I say key terminology, what I mean by that is, let's understand what are marketing principles. So the first thing that we want to look at is what are marketing principles. Now, when I say what are marketing principles, essentially, as I mentioned to you earlier, what I was alluding to is the key elements which basically are used by any company, any organization, and they tend to be looking at helping in developing effective marketing strategies. Now, these principles have evolved over a point in time, and they generally tend to be the 5, or initially it started with 4 P's of marketing, but now they have been refined to what is called the 7 P's of marketing. So if I bring this across as a slide onto the, as a picture onto the slide, so what you're going to see is that when we talk about these marketing principles, they were initially introduced by Jerome McCarthy. That's the name of the person, or the, let's say the author who actually initially proposed these, 4 P's of marketing. And he's credited with the fact that these were factors that companies need to consider when they are positioning their products or looking at designing marketing strategies which are going to send messaging across to consumers. So in the 1960s, Jerome McCarthy came up with this concept, and he defined the 4 P's or 4 principles of marketing, which are all interconnected according to him. And they are essentially, so companies start with normally a product, then they go to price, because once you have a product or a unique product that you can sell in the market, then companies then need to look at what would be the pricing of the product at some place. At some time, they have to then decide which place they will sell these products. And then how would you communicate the messaging of this product using marketing strategy in the form of promotions, whether it could be print promotions, it could be events that they do, hoardings or online promotions, depending on which medium the company chooses, they would essentially be looking at then designing a strategy around that. Now, over a point in time, they have been expanded, to 7 P's. And what is included in that is basically physical evidence, process, and people. So the way companies look at marketing, or they look at essentially, going to market, what has happened is that processes have become important. So because as businesses have become global, their operations have started, they have operations now in many different countries or places. Then in those cases, in order to drive these messaging and, marketing strategies, the company needs to standardize on what is called processes and or the ways in which it is communicated to the consumer. And that part of it is called the process. So when we look at the process, what we are essentially talking about here is the company's policies and strategies, which need to be standardized, and they would essentially then be useful, because if I look at doing a marketing, then the brand elements, the way I look at messaging, the placement of the logo, or what kind of creatives can we create, put to let's say, print, has to be decided by the head office, or has to be decided in a way wherein if a branch office picks it up, they are able to pick it up and then use it without any dilution or alteration, and it still conveys the same meaning to its consumers. So process side of things has become important, and these basically constitute the system and processes which companies use to sell or position their product effectively in front of customers. Then we look at physical evidence. In physical evidence, why this became important is because sometimes you have tangible elements of the product, and they need to be used to reinforce what kind of product or service the company is actually selling. So sometimes when you see, high-end products, like for example, if you're buying furniture, you're buying a premium, car, what people would want to do is go in and test drive or see the product or feel the product. And in those cases, the packaging of the product, which conveys the brand, and the appearance of how the location is, also comes into the consideration set of the consumers. And that is why physical evidence has become important. And then we talk about people, which are basically involved in delivering the product and services. So essentially, this has become an important element of the marketing mix, because without people, there is no communication possible. The people or resources have to be included into advertising, in other forms of marketing, which is public relations, or even now when we look at sales promotions, which are happening primarily through the digital marketing route. So this is a very important, area that we need to look at when we talk about, marketing principles. Now we'll go into a bit more detail on this in terms of, covering it. But essentially, when we look at these in general, what we generally see is that these 7 P's of marketing have now become pretty much consistent and, have got, let's say, very effectively, accepted by, most of the fraternity globally. And sometimes when we do talk about the 9 P's, what we are looking at here is the inclusion of partners and, the presentation or, passion in terms of, the addition. This is something which is also a concept which is now currently, being looked at. And the 9 P's typically, include planning and research, which has been added as a process or as a separate component. And then we look at partners in general, along with, the other elements that we look at. So some of them have been substituted. So when we talk about place, we've added distribution to it. When we talk about, let's say the whole process through which you plan, the process, so it has become planning and process. So when we look at partners is also now companies looking at doing strategic alliances. So partners and strategic alliances. And these have now, in some cases, depending on how the companies use it, the elements also sometimes depend on each other, and they have been combined for the purposes of coming out with a structured marketing strategy. Now, with this, let's go into, understanding what are the key elements. What are the key elements essentially? And when we do talk about the elements, how do we look at ensuring that this element is something which is, important, or this element is something which is going to be fundamental to how companies look at selling or coming up with their, marketing strategies. The first thing that we do in that case, in order to identify what and where the, let's say how these elements are important, is the process of actually doing what is called a marketing audit. Now, a marketing audit tends to be an assessment which is basically, performed by the marketing department or the person concerned. And here the idea is to analyze, what is the current marketing strategy, and you have to go into detail of it from top to bottom. And what you are looking at, why you're looking at this particular audit is to understand the strengths and weaknesses of the marketing strategy, and if it needs to be corrected, how you are going to devise a plan to improve its effectiveness and performance. So when we talk about marketing process and marketing principles, the first thing that you start off with is basically what is called the marketing audit. And the marketing audit tends to be the process through which and the existing marketing campaign or strategy has to be looked at, and that would be audited. That means you're going to go into by looking at what is working right, what is going wrong, and then you are going to come up with a plan to ensure that things can be put right, or changes can be introduced, and that would essentially allow you to complete this task of what is called marketing audit. And this would inform you that whether the strategy created is working or not. Are there any external factors affecting the business and its strategy? And when we do this particular audit, what we are going to do is gather data from competition, from the market, from the consumers, and look at competition and partners and suppliers to see whether the systems that have been put in place or the strategy that has been put in place is actually working or not. Now, marketing audit can be done through lots of different ways. Now, when I say marketing audit can be done through SWOT analysis, because essentially here we are looking at understanding the strengths and weaknesses of the organization and how we have covered up the weakness of a product, for example, or something that we don't want to highlight, but we have dressed it up with a strategy or a communication, and that would normally be done through this process of the audit and SWOT analysis. So when we do talk about marketing audit, what we are looking at essentially is looking at how external factors would be affecting their strategy. What are the internal factors which would affect the strategy? And these bits would inform us in terms of how the strategy is currently, shaping or working out as far as, say, for example, its rollout is concerned. An example that I would give you here would be, if I have to look at doing an audit, for example, and that audit is to basically look at uncovering, let's say how, the organization's spending on, say, advertising campaign is working. Now, what I'm going to do in this case is primarily focus on two things. First and foremost, I'd be looking at understanding that why is the company looking at introducing this product. So when I look at taking up an audit, what I'm going to do is essentially focus on understanding comprehensively the marketing efforts, activities, and goals of that campaign. Let's look at iPhone 15, which has been launched by Apple recently. And when I look at the launch of this particular new product and phone, Apple has created some sort of a marketing strategy to, send across messaging, make the customers aware, and obviously start introducing this product across various markets globally. Now, if I have to carry out a marketing audit, what I would be looking at is understanding how the campaign has been created, what are the efforts which have been put into the campaign, what activities are helping that campaign to be rolled out, and whether these activities being rolled out in the campaign, for example, you might have taken print advertising, TV advertising, there might be some events which the company is doing within its stores to let consumers try the product, put their hands on, or give them an opportunity to, hands-on use the product. Then in those cases, is the campaign or is the strategy actually helping to achieve those goals? The marketing audit will help us analyze and determine the progress of these goals which have been set when the marketing strategies have been, when this marketing strategy or the budget for that has been sanctioned. Now, for example, for the iPhone 15, as per Apple's report, they have sanctioned £1 billion in terms of money for marketing. Now, whether this £1 billion or $1 billion essentially is going to be effectively used or not, the marketing department would have done a lot of preparation and they would have created a strategy. This strategy would have been looking at which place, which country, what market, what kind of campaigns, and what would be the outlay of this budget being spent in order to increase or drive sales for the company. And this process through which a marketing audit is carried out, which is systematic, comprehensive, independent, and is done on a basis to understand whether the strategy is achieving the goals or not, would be the whole concept of actually doing a marketing audit. Now, when we look at marketing audit, we could actually do the marketing audit in different, let's say, ways. One of the ways that we could do an audit would be an organizational audit. And this could be to understand, does all, say, for example, employees within Apple, do they understand the importance of the launch of this product? Do they have the same communication strategy? Or if you are asked a question, would you respond in the same way as others are expected or as the training has been provided? So here in this case, there could be an organizational audit done to understand whether everybody is singing from the same songbook or not. You could also do an audit for systems to check whether websites, for example, are updated all across. When the product goes live, you would normally see that the Apple website is updated and it will say new product updates coming soon, or the website will update soon. And that is because globally, when it launches the product, it needs to ensure that its products and product line are correctly advertised with the correct messaging on the systems. In this case, the website, promotional campaigns, videos, messaging, print advertising, launch adverts, things like that will all have to be synchronized. And that tends to be done through the process of, ensuring that there's a systematic rollout of all the, messaging, and systems have to be audited in a way wherein Apple and the head office or the marketing department, in this case, controls the release of information in a stepwise fashion so that it creates the excitement, the buzz, and obviously the desire to purchase the new product. Then audits could be done to ensure if campaigns are being productive. That means the activities which are being carried out, or the events which have been done, or print advertising which is planned, is it delivering the results? Is it being effective? Is it leading to drive in demand for the new product? Say, for example, one of the things which Apple would drive is buy-in or trade, essentially of, the exchange, I would say, essentially of the, older product with the newer version. And when I look at that, what you're going to see is that that campaign normally also starts a couple of days into the new product launch campaign, because here the company is looking at having different forms of strategy to drive the sales for the product. So if the initial uptake of the product generally does not exceed the expectation, because the marketing department looks at forecasting and analysis from the previous launches that they've done for the model, and it's not a newer product which they're introducing, it's just a new version update. They know exactly what is the demand that they will have, or how many sales would be estimated, in the first week, second week, and so forth. Now, if it is not going to plan, then they have successive, strategies in place to look at boosting the results of those campaigns. And in those cases, a trade-in or a bring your old phone in and trade your old phone to get the new phone campaign could also be something which could be launched, earlier than what was anticipated. And this is to drive productivity, for the budgets and the spend which is being done by Apple for the launch of this new product. Then you can also do what is called the function audit. So when I talk about marketing function audit, what we are also looking at is that in this case, this audit focuses, on doing more comprehensive analysis of the company's marketing functions, things like functions which are directly or indirectly associated with marketing, things like distribution. You'll be looking at research, you'll be looking at competition, you'll be looking at communication. And these activities would be important because driving marketing alone might not lead to results. But if the product is not available in the location, if the delivery of the product reaches late, then consumers may buy other products or get other offers, from other competitor brands, and thereby, although the campaign is generating enough demand, but what is happening is the demand is not being fulfilled on time, and that is leading to loss of sale, for the company. So in such cases, a comprehensive functionality audit or function audit is normally carried out, and this is to see whether the other direct or indirect marketing functions are helping to achieve the company goals or not. And in some cases, these are the various steps that normally a company would take to do a marketing strategy audit, an environment audit. It could be an organization audit, a systems audit. It could be a productivity audit. It could be a functionality audit. And these are audits which are done in order to comprehensively look at, addressing different needs of the business. That means if a new iPhone 15 has been launched, the marketing audit and its audit types would be looking at considering all various possibilities to ensure that, the product launch becomes successful. There's a traction of the product. There is a demand which the campaign and the communication is creating, and other departments which are supporting this particular product and its sales, or essentially distribution, communication, looking at, sales of this product or sales promotion of this product are contributing to the overall success and achievement of the company goals. So that is where you would generally see that marketing audit needs to be conducted. Now, we would also look at when would or who should actually be conducting the marketing audit. Now, when the product is launched, a couple of days down the line, everything before the product is launched would have been approved, signed off by, say, Tim Cook and his top management team, and the execution of that actually then starts. But a couple of days down the line, if the numbers and projections coming from or data coming from the sale of iPhone 15 and its variants is not meeting the expectation, then at some point in time, the top management or the people involved will start conducting what is called an audit. And this audit is to look at reviewing whether the strategies put in place and the campaigns or the communication put in place is actually having the desired effect or not. And in those cases, audits can be conducted at different levels. So audit could be done by the top management, in terms of leadership, which is, say, Tim Cook at his level. If there are grave concerns and obviously the launch is not creating enough buzz and sales as was anticipated, then you would look at the audit essentially even looking at changing, the management in this case, or Tim Cook even suggesting that could we look at, stopping let's say the campaign which has gone out, but we need to rethink in terms of how do we need to launch this product or print advertising and advertising that is happening on telly. And that would then, even look at a reshuffle or maybe a change in the person who had initially created the campaign, because it's a make or break strategy for the company. It's a very big thing. Rebranding tends to be done over a period of time. It is not something that happens immediately, but sometimes marketing audit would also reveal that consumers are not able to contact or connect with your brand. And in those cases, or maybe the messaging on the website or the logo or the key elements like the tagline are not keeping in track with what the consumer expectations are. And in those cases, you would also look at rebranding. Now, if the company is looking at rapid growth, then it is likely that company comes up with maybe sometimes newer branding and say, for example, newer ways to communicate and outreach customers. And that could also be done because they feel that competition is caught on with them. There are lots of Me Too products available. And in some cases, the company needs to rebrand in order to differentiate from the clutter or from the competition, which is now caught up with it. And in those cases, because the company is experiencing, say, for example, rapid growth, they would still look at the process through which they are going to be able to, then look at the process where, they will look at rebranding essentially, with regards to changing some of the communication that they have to do. Now, marketing audit also is done sometimes when we see poor results on a long-term or short-term basis. And this is because the management feels that the return on investment is not happening for the dollars or money being spent in campaigns. You could also be looking at, falling behind in terms of how you're communicating with regards to your competition. And here, sometimes these strategies or this process of marketing audit needs to be done in order to ensure that you're current, you're up to date, you're let's say, in line with the times where the communication is required for consumers. Imagine a company, for example, which is selling its products and does not have a website today, or does not have an e-commerce platform today on its website, does not advertise online. You would generally see that that company would be losing out on a lot of business and consumers and interaction with consumers, because they have not embraced the change in times which have happened because of technology. Today, most companies have a budget which is 50-50% split between traditional marketing and online marketing. And if a company has not embraced online marketing, they would be losing out on business and revenue. And in such cases, the marketing audit picks that up and then informs the department that the company's strategy needs to be changed. And that process again starts with the process of, I would say, marketing audit. And I'll give you an example here. If you look at companies like Tesco's, there are big five grocery retailers in the UK. You have Tesco, Sainsbury, Morrison, Asda. You have now German retailers like Aldi and Lidl and Matland. Now, Aldi and Lidl have caught up with the largest retailer, Tesco, because of various reasons. One, Aldi and some of the other retailers like Sainsbury, for example, I'll take the example of Sainsbury here. They embraced the change and understood that now a lot of times consumers look at shopping online. So what they did was they acquired Argos, which was a different brand in the market. And this company was essentially, selling products through catalog advertising. So consumers could download an app, browse the products, go into the stores in certain locations, browse through the catalog, order it, and the warehouse would bring the product and pretty much take delivery of it straight away. Now they realize that in order to grow the market, they have to diversify into other categories as well, include electronics, which is a big revenue generator today in the market. When people look at buying electronic products, it could be from a printer to a TV to an MP3 player, a phone, a gaming device. It could be lots of things. And what they did was they acquired this company. Now Tesco in the process got left out. So it then did not want to shortcut by acquiring a company or merging with another company. What it did was it created its own division, and that division essentially started to then offer products like mobile phones in particular within its stores. And this led to Tesco Electricals and Electronics being created as a division under the business. But this took a lot of time in terms of its creation, and the market had moved on. That means there were lots of other options available in the market. And when Tesco did it, it basically did a Me Too strategy, but it was a tad late in terms of entering the market. And when we look at this as an audit which was done, obviously the chief executive and the top people in the organization realized that today a lot of gadgets are bought from the stores as well. And if we have them, because we have footfalls coming into the store, it would have been a good addition to the business. Now, although the audit predicted this and they took that step, but it had started from a position of weakness because it was seen as a last entrance in the market. And obviously consumers had preferences of buying those products from Argos, and that is where Sainsbury ended up acquiring that brand. So these are things which come up and are looked at very seriously when some sort of an audit is done. And that contributes to the looking into of or introspection of the change of marketing strategy with the change in times in order for the business to compete and obviously, let's say, attract revenue. Is that okay? Is that understood?
Yeah, yes, sir. Okay.
Okay. Now, when we look at different areas of marketing, what are the various areas of marketing when we talk about this from a concept of inclusion? So we look at areas of marketing which include branding. We look at website, search engine optimization. We look at offline methods of marketing. We look at competitor analysis, email marketing, and social media marketing. This is a slide that I put in primarily to ensure and show that when we talk about traditional routes of marketing or traditional methods of marketing, and when we look at digital route and mixing of some of the when I say traditional routes of marketing typically would be, marketing which was done or was carried out and still does carried out, but it might be in variation. You look at direct emails, catalog advertising, event advertising, you look at television, radio, you look at print adverts, you look at billboard advertising, or you look at, say, for example, print advertising. These tend to be what are called the traditional mediums of advertising. Now, when we mix them up with primarily digital medium or modes of marketing, we include this. Branding tends to come obviously as a consistent part because that is there in traditional advertising as well. So it will include things like, reviews, brand logo, tagline, mentions of the brand, website. But these are the digital elements which come in: SEO, social media, email marketing, and obviously competitor analysis is the research part of it, which the department in any case takes up. So when we look at these discount codes, things like direct emails, newsletters, or, when companies reward customers for reviews or referrals, they all tend to fall into the elements of what is called digital marketing. Now, in order to do and understand the audit, say, for example, the strengths and weaknesses of the organization, what we are going to look at is a traditional model for doing that analysis of identifying strengths and weakness. And that would be done primarily through the process of carrying out what is called a SWOT analysis. Now, when we look at SWOT analysis in general, so in terms of, let me do one quick thing which I want to put just as a slide on traditional marketing in terms of how we would do that. So here, if I put another slide, which is traditional marketing methods. Now, what I want to do is just to differentiate so that we know clearly that what are the traditional marketing methods and, what are the digital marketing methods. So these two slides would, help you differentiate that. Now, going back to what is called SWOT analysis. So when we talk about SWOT analysis in marketing, what we are looking at primarily is, carrying out, let's say, an activity or an exercise, which will be looking at finding, analyzing, and documenting what are the company's internal strengths and weaknesses when it comes to, sending out communication in the market with regards to a product or service which the company sells. And this would also be focused on bringing into aspect whether these weaknesses or, let's say, areas of threat are how many of them or how they are externally, motivated or affecting the company's strategy from outside. So in some cases, when we look at this as a process that we do or carry out, would be essentially done in the context of looking at and analyzing what could be the weaknesses and threat areas, and these primarily being, let's say, impacted by external factors which could be affecting its, strategy. External factors could be competition, it could be availability of substitute products, it could be change in demand, consumer preferences, it could be political factors, economic factors, it could be whole set of external factors which are beyond the control of the organization. So these external factors, sometimes companies have to understand and analyze them because they pose a risk to the organizational, to the organization in general, but in context, the marketing strategy. And these factors can be, affecting not just this a particular business, but different businesses in the sector, because they are not going to be company specific, they are going to be sector specific. And these could be economic downturns, for example, it could be intense competition, availability of substitute products, changes in regulation. For example, when UK exited European Union, the regulatory changes were required to be done to look at practices and policies to be put in place from the government side to look at how imports and exports are being done. And these were regulatory changes which the government actually introduced and all companies had to follow. So when we look at SWOT analysis, I have taken up an example here of Netflix just to explain in terms of, SWOT analysis, with regards to why, we look at, and how does Netflix, for example, look at, I would say, for example, look into detail in terms of what are its weaknesses and how can it continue to grow its business or experience growth. Now, when it was introduced a couple of years back, or maybe a decade back, you see that it was a new concept. They took over, and Blockbuster, which was another company which was engaged in rentals of video cassettes when people used to look at movies, games, and other things. It brought in a concept that everything could be digitized, and it experienced exponential growth in those initial years because it brought in a new concept, and then it became, over a point in time, a dominant player in the streaming industry or the streaming market. Now, as its reputation has grown, what consumers are now relating it to is that it is a good product to use. It is easy to use, and it attracts a lot of subscribers. People have the flexibility to be able to take on a subscription and cancel a subscription, and it is seen as an affordable way of entertaining or having entertainment across across various devices in a home. Now, over a point in time, what the company has realized is that it is facing stiff competition from other such players which have come into the market. Players like Hulu, players like Play Now. There are lots of streaming services, Jadoo TV, for example, in certain countries. These kind of players have actually now come on and have got caught up. They've caught up with the technology which Netflix provides. And this, has provided stiff competition in terms of its revenue growth and subscriber growth, which is not happening as it was happening a couple of years back. And this has led to, obviously, it also then going into creation of content, because one of the opportunities it saw was that if its content is unique, then it could also look at keeping that content unique would mean that it is exclusively available on Netflix, which would mean if the series or the content becomes a hit, a lot of consumers would end up signing into the Netflix service, and thereby this presents an opportunity for them to increase subscribers and increase revenue. Now, Netflix has also tried to go into newer markets. So it started off in the US, now has got established in Europe. It is going to markets like India. And here they are looking at markets like India because they feel that the production and creation of content can be done at very economical costs. So a lot of movies today being created, a lot of drama series are being created exclusively for Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, Play Now. And what they're trying to do is, keep the audience connected to that particular service. So the SWOT analysis here, when a company does an audit in terms of finding out where is the next step of phase of growth for them, what could be the next frontier for them, they would conduct a SWOT analysis, and the SWOT analysis would inform them about their strengths. Yes, the company is old, it's the oldest in the market, it has a lot of base in terms of consumers. It is now present in many, many countries. Content is available, but weaknesses tend to be competition is caught up. There are other cheaper options on the streaming platforms. There is dependency of licensing. Sometimes you would also see that a lot of consumers switch over from Netflix to Paramount or some of the other services because they feel that the content is not good, or the series that they want to watch is exclusively available on Amazon and other places. And that tends to be a weakness. So in some cases, it tends to be also providing, it becomes high cost. And then when we look at opportunities, it is looking at expansion into developing markets like India in particular, because they have a population base of, say, 1.3 billion, out of which a population base of 700 is the target segment, 700 million, which they can attract. So it is going into strategic partnerships with Jio or Reliance in India and other platforms like Tata to be able to provide this service and gain consumers. Some of the threats are intense competition, competitive markets or pricing, specifically when we look at Indian market, and then we look at technology penetration because it requires high quality infrastructure. It is important for it to identify these threats and then take necessary steps to be able to counter them and then appropriately position its offering in the market. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Now let's look at briefly segmentation. Now, when we talk about segmentation, why do we need market segmentation? That's the first question which comes to mind. So when we talk about marketing segmentation, why do we need it, and why does a company needs to do market segmentation? Now, market segmentation is a term which normally refers to how a company would look at aggregating buyers into groups or segments because they have common needs, and in order to respond to these common needs with products and different variations of the product, the company would look at segmenting the market or dividing the market so that they know that the messaging, the consumer that they're going across to, the price points that they're positioning, and the product variant that they are positioning is meeting the customer's demand. Now, when we talk about segmentation, there are generally 4 types of segmentations which are recognized. One is geographic, second is demographic, third is behavioral, and fourth is psychographic. So when we talk about market segmentation in terms of various types, demographic tends to be wherein you're looking at dividing the market on the basis of factors such as age, gender, income, and education. And that would be demographic, segmentation. That how many of your consumers are, bachelors or have a higher qualification or have a good job, or what is the income level, and those, or what is the age of those consumers you would look at. Then you look at psychographic, which is primarily the focus of the company is to look at understanding customers' lifestyle, their values, and their interests. And in this case, the company might be looking at, for example, nowadays in the Western world, people are very focused on carbon footprint. So a lot of customers are buying, what are called electric vehicles. And in some cases, they are also looking at now sustainability and carbon footprint. So this is a psychographic thing which the company needs to identify, that consumers' lifestyle and values and interests are changing, and they need to be able to position products accordingly. Then we look at behavioral segmentation. This tends to be when consumers look at buying basis their behavior. They are loyal to a particular brand. They have frequencies in which they purchase the product. If you look at Amazon, for example, it targets consumers at a time when they know exactly when is the because of what they study from past data, though they know exactly when they have to put out these offers and campaigns, and they know certain times during which consumers can shop. So one of the surveys which was carried out by Amazon, felt that men tend to shop late in the evenings between 10:30 and 1:30 a.m. in the night, because that is the time they have to themselves. And most of the offers on men's product tend to come across on Amazon when you are browsing the Amazon store at that point in time. Now, this is a behavioral aspect which the company has studied, and what it's trying to then do is obviously segment and let's say put the products out or offers out in a way wherein they are rewarding frequent shoppers or type of consumers when they're shopping at a particular point in time. Geographic segmentation tends to categorize consumers by their geographic location. That means an ice cream company might look at producing different flavors, in warm regions and cold regions, because they still want to sell the product throughout the year. But if it's a cold climate country, they would have maybe slightly different flavors. But if it sells its product in warmer countries or tropical-based, climate-based countries, you would normally look at they having a different process through which they would look at flavors and different types of products that they sell in that market. So segmentation, I've created one slide each in discussing and giving example of what these are. And segmentation generally tends to provide businesses with a strategic advantage of understanding and enabling them to tailor their marketing efforts to a specific customer segment, thereby what the main aim is ultimately increasing the chances of their success. That means ultimately increasing the chances of producing a sale by sending that messaging across. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Now, the last assessment criteria talks about analyzing the principles of marketing. So when we talk about the analysis of the principles of marketing, we look at, various aspects of why, and how these principles can essentially be involved in understanding the core concepts and the building of strategies which companies look at by creating online or offline marketing campaigns. Now, couple of things that companies look at, because budgets are always finite, and when we talk about digital marketing, we are looking at all the elements of how the company would utilize and send messaging across on the digital medium, which is basically through the internet. Now, that could be email marketing, search engine optimization, pay-per-click advertising. It could be newsletter marketing. It could be coupons that they promote through placements in different websites or different other platforms, but predominantly all related to the internet channels. So when we talk about YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, these are all different forms of channels which companies use for getting the message across to the consumers. Now, what the companies are looking at is they're looking at getting and the right balance and the mix of how they would want to advertise and get the message across of using a marketing campaign. Now, this balance tends to be based on affordability and the aspect of what kind of channels the company can afford within the budget that it is going to spend on getting that campaign across, or use that campaign to get the messaging across to the consumers. So when we talk about digital marketing and in general, when we talk about the aspects of marketing, timing becomes very important, content becomes very important, and in order to audit, the tracking side of things becomes very important in the case of digital marketing. So timing of the campaign, the content in terms of what is the messaging and is it hitting, is it hard hitting, is it relating to the customer? And then basically the tracking of those communications becomes very important in order to realize the return on investment as far as digital marketing things are concerned. Now, when we talk about the principles of digital marketing, you're looking at things like consistency. You're looking at content is king that we talk about. We also hear about a principle which is called KISS, keep it simple. That tends to be a principle wherein you are not looking at complicating things. You're avoiding any complications in terms of sending marketing messages across or contradicting marketing messages across. You want simplicity in your design and messages, and that is where the simplicity part of it comes through the KISS model, which is keep it simple and straight. Now, there are other parts that you look at when we look at digital marketing. It could be inbound marketing and it could be outbound marketing. Inbound tends to be when the approach is to attract consumers and ask them to interact with the content on your website or on some of your channels and medias wherein you are traditionally using, where I would say you're using traditional methods of marketing, like things like print. You see a print advertisement and there's a call to action on that text, so-and-so to get 10% off. So what you're doing is you're bringing customers to interact with you by following what is called inbound marketing, or using techniques to primarily allow consumers to join inbound marketing. And outbound tends to be when companies are looking at focusing on an approach wherein they are reaching out to potential customers, which could be telemarketing, newsletter marketing, email marketing, mobile phone messaging, and they would be, sending communications across to mass consumers. And out of that, a certain percentage of that would come back and start interacting with you with regards to ensuring that they are able to, they are interested in your product and you're able to sell those products. So digital marketing has become a very important aspect of all marketing, communication and strategies within companies. And when this is applied, it can form a very, it can form the basis of, successful marketing campaigns. And the advantage of digital marketing is also that the return on investment and tracking, because it's all based on numbers and tracking is possible when you send the messaging out, it allows marketers to essentially also course correct and make changes to the campaigns quite quickly as against print or traditional campaigns, which are committed for longer durations. Like TV advertising, you've signed up a contract with a television network that you're going to be advertising for a year, but you can change your advertisements, but you cannot take away the budget because you've entered into a contract. But on the digital marketing side, these things can be updated, changed, and it can be, the course corrections can essentially happen because it allows that to happen basis the products and, obviously basis the requirements of the consumer and how the campaigns are actually faring. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
So this brings us to the end of today's session. And what we're going to do is obviously catch up on Monday to cover Learning Outcome 3. I'll be uploading 1 or 2 case studies that you would need to go through and some handouts which will allow you to read a bit more about traditional marketing and digital marketing shortly.
Okay, sure, sir.
Okay, thanks for joining in this session today, and I'll make the recording available to you very shortly on the WhatsApp group, and then the copy of that will also go up on Moodle.
Okay, sir. Thank